Los Everglades es uno de los ecosistemas más populares de Florida por su dimensión y diversidad. Hemos visto en la prensa cómo sus animales nativos están siendo amenazados por la conocida serpiente pitón, pero ellas no están solas. Hay otro reptil invasor que carece de fama, pero no de apetito.
They eat pretty much everything.
A voracious predator.
The problem is really that they don't belong.
Tegu Argentino, de mascota exótica a amenaza ecológica. En inglés se le llama herpes a los amantes de los reptiles. Muchos de ellos se dan cita en Repticon, que es un show que se realiza en muchas ciudades de Estados Unidos, reuniendo a los criadores y conocedores del medio. De acuerdo con un estudio de Georgetown Economic Services publicado en el portal web de la Casa Blanca, la ganancia de la industria reptil en el 2009 estuvo entre los 1 y 1.4 billones de dólares. Ese mismo año habían 13.6 millones de reptiles como mascotas en Estados Unidos y su mayor concentración estaba en los estados de Florida y California. Uno de los reptiles que ha cobrado gran popularidad en los últimos años es el Argentine Black and White Tegu, mejor conocido en español como Tegu Argentino. Este es un tipo de lagartija gigante que puede llegar a medir entre 4 y 5 pies de largo. Uno de sus atributos físicos más llamativos es su piel blanca y negra y su larga lengua. Algunas personas han llegado a sustituir a mascotas tradicionales como perros y gatos y tienen en su casa a este tegu.
I like them because I walk outside, I whistle to them, they come running up. It's the variety that's out there and the personality that they have.
Estos animales son originarios de Sudamérica, pero a partir del 2005 empezaron a despertar interés entre los expertos en Florida por su presencia en el estado. ¿Pero cómo llegaron a establecerse en el sur de Florida? Florida City es la municipalidad más al sur del área metropolitana del condado Miami-Dade. Tiene un área de 3.2 millas cuadradas y según la Oficina del Censo de Estados Unidos en el 2012 tenía casi 12,000 habitantes. Forma parte de los suburbios del sur de Miami y es un área que en su mayoría está dedicada a la agricultura. A pocas millas de esta ciudad se encuentra el Parque Nacional Everglades, que es hogar de muchos animales nativos que han disminuido sus números a través de los años. En Florida, se ha reportado poblaciones de tegus argentinos en varias ciudades del condado de Hillsborough, pero su mayor concentración se encuentra en Florida City. El profesor e investigador de la Universidad de Florida, Frank Mazzotti, tiene aproximadamente 5 años siguiéndole la pista al tegu.
They've been very popular in the pet trade for a number of years now. And we don't know exactly when, but it's probably about 10 or 15 years ago that a population was either escaped or released in Miami-Dade County. There are other populations around the state, but this population in particular. And they became established in breeding.
La familia Rodney Irwin ha vivido por 3 generaciones en Florida City. Hace 3 años, trabajando en una demolición bajo el agua, vio un animal que le llamó mucho la atención, ya que no lo conocía. Desde ahí decidió investigarlos y empezar a capturarlos.
The population that I'm trapping from right now are descendants from a large breeding operation here just south of Florida City. Prior to 2005, that operation released Argentine tegus into the wild. This was not common practice, but it was done by a few breeders.
Liz Barraco, bióloga y coordinadora del programa de Maestría para mascotas exóticas, es la encargada de monitorear a los tegus argentinos para la Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission.
The challenge we're seeing there and the problem is that these animals are very firmly established. They're eating some of our native animals, and they're, becoming very strongly established there.
¿Pero por qué esta lagartija gigante representa un problema para el sur de Florida?
They're non-native invasive animals. They've come into my backyard, literally, and they're taking out the animals that I grew up with, my dad, my grandfather grew up with. Our native species did not evolve with a 4-foot-long predatory lizard in the mix.
They eat pretty much everything. It includes small mammals and birds, but especially eggs. And we're very concerned about the impact that they can have on things like alligators and turtles, endangered American crocodiles in Miami-Dade County, ground nesting birds.
And what we've seen is that within that distribution, they're very firmly established. We haven't really seen numbers go down as we've been removing. We're seeing those numbers go up.
Ya han habido campañas sobre el peligro del apitón, pero ¿saben los residentes del sur de Florida cuál es el impacto de este nuevo reptil?
The questions that people have about pythons, how far will they spread? Well, that question's really been answered for tegus. We know they can easily spread throughout Florida and probably past.
A python will eat one animal and may not eat for quite a long period of time, whereas tegus will go into a nest. They will physically eat as many eggs as they can put in their body, and just the size and mass of a big tegu inside of a nest will destroy all of the eggs that are left in that nest. And in that way, a tegu takes out an entire generation at a time, as opposed to a python which eats a single animal.
Esto presenta una gran amenaza para muchos de los animales en los Everglades.
The initial release point is close to the Everglades National Park, and it's a fairly remote area. They have moved into parts of South Florida, south of here, that were farmed at one time, are no longer farmed, and now there are just hundreds of acres of very thick cane grass that grows up to about 10 feet. Underneath, at ground level, there's usually a void of about 6 or 8 inches, and it's just a virtual tunnel network for tegus and rats and anything else that lives in that area.
En el 2006, el Tampa Tribune publicó un artículo que menciona una lagartija de 5 pies que estaba creando preocupación en el condado de Hillsborough. Al pasar de los años se ha mencionado esporádicamente sin ocupar un lugar muy importante en los medios. La profesora de la Universidad Internacional de la Florida, Juliet Pinto, ha centrado su carrera de investigación en la enseñanza de la comunicación ambiental y científica en los medios.
So, the values of news and news gathering can often be conflicting with what environmental news is, if we take it in a broad sense. So some stories get covered a lot, like the ball pythons when they're found in people's pools. Other invasive species don't get covered so much because we don't have those arresting visuals, or it's not as visual, period, and it's not being seen by people and therefore not taken into account as impacting their day-to-day life.
La Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission no está ajena al caso del tegu argentino.
So the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission is doing multiple things to really work with this problem of tegus. In both populations, we have field technicians who are going out and trapping the animals during tegu season, which is when they're not in brumation. This is happening almost every day. There's a coordinated effort to go and trap and remove. We've also have some historical data. We did some camera trapping to figure out where the distribution of these animals were.
Uno de los esfuerzos más grandes por esta comisión es tener un sistema en el que todas las personas involucradas con los tegus argentinos, incluyendo el público, puedan comunicar sus hallazgos.
EdMaps is an online reporting program and system so that people can report exotic species sightings, plants and animals included. And what happens is all those sightings go into a database so we can pull up a distribution of any species and see where they've been reported throughout of Florida. And having that kind of data available really helps us see where things are spreading to and if something pops up where it's unexpected and we haven't seen it before.
En el 2011, el número de tegus reportados en EdMaps se duplicó.
So the increase in reporting your sightings and the increase the popularity of I've Got One, both the hotline and the online app, I think has a lot to do with people knowing more about the program. Since 2011, there's been more effort put into getting the word out about reporting, and I think that's why we're seeing more reports overall. We have outreach materials such as brochures that we can get out to the public so people can learn more about the problem, but really the number one thing you can do to be a part of the solution is to be observational, look out your window, and report what you're seeing if it's something that you know shouldn't belong.
Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission ha unido esfuerzos con el equipo investigador de IFAS de la Universidad de Florida.
We are doing trapping programs to remove them, and we're also doing, along with that, surveys so that we can monitor the effectiveness of those trapping programs.
Joy Vince trabaja con el profesor Mazzotti y se encarga de revisar las 22 trampas que tienen en el campo. En muchos casos están vacías. Algunos días atrapan animales locales, pero estos son puestos en libertad, ya que ellos insisten que su función principal es proteger a la fauna nativa. Pero según Vince, casi todos los días atrapan al menos un tegu, aunque recientemente tuvieron un día muy activo con 5 tegus argentinos.
One down. It's a pretty large male. He's missing, obviously regenerated his tail a little bit, so the tail would normally be a little longer for an animal this size. Nice. He's actually so big that I can't get my hand all the way around his neck.
Luego de ser atrapados, los tegus son llevados al laboratorio donde son sacrificados y posteriormente se les hace una necropsia.
We do the necropsies to get an idea of, for one, the diet of what the animal has been eating. We also want to get an idea if there's anything abnormal that's going on with the animal in terms of their organs, internal systems. We can just get an overview, general idea of what's going on inside the animal that we can't see from the outside.
For my master's thesis with Florida Atlantic University and also with Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, we were working on really getting an idea what the tegus are eating. And by doing so, what we did, we had all the animals that were removed over a period of 3 years. When Frank Mazzotti's lab would do the necropsies, they would save the stomach contents and I would do the analysis on them. So what we've done with over 160 different samples is go through those diet contents one by one, identify every organism that's in there as best we could. That includes common insects, some small mammals. We've seen different bird bones in there. We've seen small hull turtles, and we're also seeing a really strong occurrence of eggs, both bird and reptile. And that's where we're getting our large concern for what impact they might be having is, you know, they could theoretically go through and devour a really good portion of a nest of an endangered animal.
Also, the reproductive measurements that we're also taking during the necropsies to see how they're reproducing, when they're reproducing here in Florida, and how that reproductive cycle is going as well.
Argentine black and white tegus are very prolific breeders. I have large clutch sizes. They can average 25 and 30 eggs per clutch. They reach sexual maturity pretty quickly and can be sexually active for a number of years.
Pero FWC y IFAS no son los únicos removiendo tegus de Florida City. Rodney Irwin creó un negocio que le permite remover a los tegus de su área sin que sean sacrificados.
Well, trap's down. I can't see if there's a tegu, but what do you think, little guy? Yeah. Right now I'm running 50 traps. I will be soon bumping that up to 75 traps. And all of these traps are located in areas that are very hard and difficult to work in. It's just a terrible work environment. Each trap I check if there's a tegu in it, I remove it, transport it home and put it into my inventory. If it's not a tegu in there, then I rebait the trap, reset it, and leave it for the next day. That generally takes 4 to 5 hours. Now at this time, I have about 180 tegus in my inventory.
Luego que Rodney Irwin atrapa sus tegus, son llevados a un área en su propiedad donde son aislados por unos días y tratados para eliminar parásitos y problemas bacterianos. Luego son colocados con el resto de su población general. Irwin coloca a todos los tegus argentinos blancos y negros juntos sin importar el tamaño, pero según él, hay otro tipo de tegu que ha atrapado esporádicamente, pero que mantiene alejado del resto de sus tegus.
This is the one everybody's concerned about. Notice the way he doesn't act like the others. That is a big gold too. They don't usually come this size. Come on, buddy. Yeah. He's a pretty animal. For every one of these golds I catch about 100 black and whites. Yeah, I'll just take her home in that trap because I don't want to put her into the my transport tube because I don't like to put the golds with my black and whites. I don't know why that is, but I don't want to have them learn bad habits. I will not sell gold tegus anyone in Florida. The threat there is such that if the gold tegus ever reach the population level that the black and whites have attained now, then we'll really have problems because they are a very, very aggressive lizard.
El trabajo de Erwin no es solo atrapar y vender tegus. Él anota todos los detalles de sus capturas para posteriormente pasar un reporte.
I report all of my captures, approximate size, sex if I can determine it. You cannot determine sex on a tegu. As a yearling, they have to get about 2 feet before you can accurately determine if it's a male or a female. That is a report that I generate, and it goes to University of Florida. USGS are quite active. Of course, Florida Fish and Game Commission. They're trying to get a picture on how big the population is and where the population is moving.
A finales del 2009, la senadora estatal de Florida, Eleanor Sobel, que para el momento era miembro del Comité de Conservación y Preservación Ambiental, presentó un proyecto de ley que buscaba prohibir la importación y liberación de animales no nativos a menos de que éstos tuviesen un permiso de FWC. Después de ser aprobada por el Senado, el Congreso Estatal y el Gobernador, entró en vigor el 1 de julio del 2010. En la ley se prohíbe a personas o entidades tener, poseer, importar, vender, negociar, cambiar o criar ciertos reptiles en el estado. En la lista de reptiles prohibidos se encuentran 5 tipos de serpientes pitón, la anaconda verde y el Nile monitor.
Another invasive lizard that we have in Florida are Nile monitors. Monitors are primarily found in the Old World, Africa and Asia. They're ecologically equivalent to tegus. They grow very large, they're carnivorous. Both species are aquatic. Nile monitors are even more aquatic than tegus, are much more like alligators. That's another species which is increasing. Its areas of concentration right now are around Cape Coral on the west coast and up in Palm Beach County.
Según Edmonds, hasta el momento han sido reportados más argentines tegus que Nile monitors. Desde el 2011, el tegu ha tenido más recurrencias todos los años. ¿Pero por qué los tegus no son parte de esta lista de animales prohibidos?
The Nile monitor already had an established population in Cape Coral at the time that legislation went through, and I think that had a lot to do with it. That population has been there for a long time, so we're not really seeing reports from that population continuing to go on EdMaps because so many people are so used to them being there, they contact their local county as opposed to calling us to report something new.
En la ley se especifica que en un futuro se pueden agregar otros animales que sean designados como condicionales o prohibidos por la Comisión. Con una población en rápido crecimiento, ¿podrían llegar los tegus a esta lista?
I would say that's underway. One of the most important things I think in general that we should be doing are these risk assessments so that we can identify risky species and then take the appropriate steps to protect the environment.
Sin duda, una resolución como esta traería repercusiones en la industria de reptiles, especialmente a los herpers, que son los que capturan a estos animales.
So I was never a herper from birth, but these are people that are passionate about reptiles in general. And they are staunchly against any bans that will interrupt their industry.
Is the answer to start banning and prohibiting things? I think only in very rare cases would that be the effective tool.
Una situación, tres maneras distintas de enfrentarlo.
I'm catching tegus that are pregnant now, and it's a good thing whenever I catch one, because that tegu represents another 20 or so that, if remained in the Everglades, would, out of the 20, quite a few of them will reach adult size.
When we do the, one of the things we want to do with the radio telemetry is to put the radio transmitters on females in the hopes that they'll lead us to nests so we can get a better idea about that nesting behavior so that we can see if we can figure out how to interrupt it.
In the case of the Argentine black and white tegu and other exotic species, if you see something that doesn't belong, take a picture and report your sighting. You can report your sighting online or by calling our hotline. The hotline number is 1-888-I've-GOT-ONE, and online you can report it I'veGotOne.org.
¿Cuál es el futuro de los tegus argentinos en Florida?
This is why we really don't need to kill them. These guys make wonderful pets. Once that you bond with them, they're just a friendly little guy.
So their ability to move, their cold tolerance, and their diet, none of those things augur well for what will happen if this population continues to spread.
I don't think we have a good chance of removing these animals from that area and making it so that they no longer exist there. But what we do have a really good chance of is protecting the borders of that distribution and preventing them from spreading into areas of really strong concern, such as Everglades National Park and Turkey Point, which is a mitigation area that has a lot of our endangered American crocodiles.
Ninguno de los expertos se atreve a dar un número exacto de cuántos tegus argentinos hay sueltos, ya que no se puede saber a ciencia cierta el porcentaje que representan las capturas con respecto a la población que está libre. Teniendo en cuenta que se está comenzando una nueva temporada de reproducción y de que cada hembra puede llegar a poner hasta 35 huevos, a finales de este año es muy probable que Florida City tenga miles de tegus argentinos nuevos. Y con esto, que cada día que pase se vaya apagando la luz para muchos animales que son presa del tegu argentino.
Here just south of Florida City. Prior to 2005, that operation released Argentine tegus into the wild. This was not common practice, but it was done by a few breeders.
Liz Barraco, bióloga y coordinadora del programa de Amnistía para mascotas exóticas, es la encargada de monitorear a los tegus argentinos para la Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission.
The challenge we're seeing there and the problem is that these animals are very firmly established. They're eating some of our native animals, and they're, becoming very strongly established there.
Pero ¿por qué esta lagartija gigante representa un problema para el sur de Florida?
They're non-native invasive animals. They've come into my backyard, literally, and they're taking out the animals that I grew up with.
Los Everglades es uno de los ecosistemas más populares de Florida por su dimensión y diversidad. Hemos visto en la prensa cómo sus animales nativos están siendo amenazados por la conocida serpiente pitón. Pero ellas no están solas. Hay otro reptil invasor que carece de fama, pero no de apetito.
They eat pretty much everything.
A voracious predator.
The problem is really that they don't belong.
Tegu argentino, de mascota exótica a amenaza ecológica. En inglés se le llama herpes a los amantes de los reptiles. Muchos de ellos se dan cita en Repticon, que es un show que se realiza en muchas ciudades de Estados Unidos, reuniendo a los criadores y conocedores del medio. De acuerdo con un estudio de Georgetown Economic Services publicado en el portal web de la Casa Blanca, la ganancia del industria 5 años siguiéndole la pista al tegu.
They've been very popular in the pet trade for a number of years now. And we don't know exactly when, but it's probably about 10 or 15 years ago that a population was either escaped or released in Miami-Dade County. There are other populations around the state, but this population in particular, and they became established in breeding.
La familia de Rodney Irwin ha vivido por 3 generaciones en Florida City. Hace 3 años, trabajando en una demolición bajo el agua, vio un animal que le llamó mucho la atención, ya que no lo conocía. Desde ahí decidió investigarlos y empezar a capturarlos.
The population that I'm trapping from right now are descendants from a large breeding operation.
De Sudamérica, pero a partir del 2005 empezaron a despertar interés entre los expertos en Florida por su presencia en el estado. ¿Pero cómo llegaron a establecerse en el sur de Florida? Florida City es la municipalidad más al sur del área metropolitana del condado Miami-Dade. Tiene un área de 3.2 millas cuadradas y según la Oficina del Censo de Estados Unidos en el 2012 tenía casi 12.000 habitantes. Forma parte de los suburbios del sur de Miami y es un área que en su mayoría está dedicada a la agricultura. A pocas millas de esta ciudad se encuentra el Parque Nacional Everglades, que es hogar de muchos animales nativos que han disminuido sus números a través de los años. En Florida, se ha reportado poblaciones de tegus argentinos en varias ciudades del condado de Hillsborough, pero su mayor concentración se encuentra en Florida City. El profesor e investigador de la Universidad de Florida, Frank Mazzotti, tiene aproximadamente 5 reptiles. En el 2009 estuvo entre los 1 y 1.4 billones de dólares. Ese mismo año habían 13.6 millones de reptiles como mascotas en Estados Unidos y su mayor concentración estaba en los estados de Florida y California. Uno de los reptiles que ha cobrado gran popularidad en los últimos años es el Argentine Black and White Tegu, mejor conocido en español como Tegu Argentino. Este es un tipo de lagartija gigante que puede llegar a medir entre 4 y 5 pies de largo. Uno de sus atributos físicos más llamativos es su piel blanca y negra y su larga lengua. Algunas personas han llegado a sustituir a mascotas tradicionales como perros y gatos y tienen en su casa a este tegu.
I like them because I walk outside, I whistle to them, they come running up. It's the variety that's out there and the personality that they have.
Estos animales son originarios